Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Interact podcast. My name is Josh Haynam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Interact. And today I am joined by the co-founder of Enji, Tayler Cusick-Hollman. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to chat with you because you run a SaaS company and you're using a quiz and it's working well, at least as we talked about before we hit record. And so I'm really curious to hear all your perspectives, and you're also a seasoned marketer. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. Thanks for being here. And do you want to just kind of intro us with how you're using the quiz?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I was really excited to reconnect with you after meeting you last year at the Kick conference. And before we hit record, folks, like Josh and I nerded out on startup founder life. So it's always a bright spot in my calendar when I get to chat with people who are living a similar crazy lifestyle. But I started using Interact after meeting you last year at the Kick conference. And that was about the time where you guys were launching at that point, it was like a new AI quiz builder feature. And I remember watching that and being in the session and just going, that was rad. Like I can get a quiz set up in like a few clicks. Okay, I absolutely have to try this. And having a quiz as a lead magnet was something that had been on my long honey-do list for myself of things that, hey, these would be really smart things for you to implement. And as someone who works either as a like working founder who's wearing a lot of hats, or you're on like a bootstrapped marketing team for a software company, that like the capacity problem is the problem of all problems. It's like, okay, well, yeah, those are great ideas, but when is it actually going to fit into my life? And so after watching that session and being a part of it, is like, okay, this is the universe tippy tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you got to get this up and running. And so that was when I turned it on. And I used the AI feature as a base just because I was trying to get as familiar with the software as I could as quickly. And using that, I think, really expedited my personal onboarding. And then I ended up creating the quiz that we've got on our website from scratch because I realized, oh, this is actually quite simple, even if you're doing it in a 100% human powered way. And so I created a quiz that was just really meant to help people understand where they were having a breakdown in their marketing and what a simple like first step toward fixing that problem could be. And so I turned that up, and pretty immediately people started taking the quiz, giving me their email, even though I didn't require, or I don't, that quiz does not require someone's email to be captured in order to get their results. And so even though it's like you could get your results without it, people are still like, it's almost like a weird way of giving someone a tip for thank you for this information. I will give you my email as a thank you. And so it's just been running for a little over a year now, and I haven't seen any sort of drop in the pace that people are doing it and signing onto our email list. So like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the next step is to think of another way that we can add like a different quiz that solves a different problem for us onto the website next.
I like the way you frame that up. Like you figure out where they're struggling with marketing and then give them like a simple step to move forward. That's that's really, I mean, it's so simple, but like also not something that happens a lot. How did you know to approach them with that problem of like where are you struggling with your marketing?
So, I have always had this premise, like this assumption, which it's totally okay to base a lot of your marketing experiments on an assumption that you have. And my assumption has always been that people struggle with a lot of, well, there's three things that they struggle with when it comes to their marketing. It's knowing what to do, it's actually being consistent with it, and then it's knowing what works over time. And my background is in marketing consulting, and those were problems that my clients who booked me for services had time and time again. And so that was what my service offerings ended up being about. And then, that's what basically Enji is trying to solve. And so I wanted something that was a direct line into, hey, these are ways that my software can help you take that first step. But I didn't want the software to be front and center. I wanted it to be more humanistic. And so it was really just like taking what I knew about our customers and turning those experiences and questions that they're constantly asking into a set of like questions that we could ask them to help them finger quote discover this problem that they were having. Because in a lot of ways, what our current quiz is trying to do is just show people that we understand the problem that they're having, which B then validates like their experience, because a lot of people think that what they're struggling with is unique to themselves and like, I don't know how I could ever solve this problem. So it really, I think, helps to dial the temperature down and helping people go from a place of my hair is on fire. I'm like so overwhelmed that I don't know what I could possibly do to put this out, to, oh, like here's something that's pretty straightforward that I can do. And, a lot of lead magnets attempt to give people a simple first step action item. But when people are delivering lead magnets that are PDFs or mini courses or whatever, that helpful first step gets buried underneath all of this other unnecessary fluff. Even though it's like you're trying to be helpful, you end up burying the headline. And that's the great thing about these quizzes, is that you don't have the real estate to bury the headline, right? Like just ask them the questions, give them what they want. And it's such a simple transaction then.
Yeah, yeah. And if you try to put the real estate back in, it's rough. Like sometimes people will send me quizzes for feedback, and not knocking on you if this is you, but like sometimes the title is like 50 words and you're like, don't think anybody's going to read that.
Totally. They're super not going to read it.
No, it has to be really, really succinct. But then it does force you to know what it is that you should prompt people with, like the question that you should prompt people with. But what you were saying there that I think kind of jumped out at me is like, the three main challenges that somebody's facing in their marketing, but you're not necessarily jumping straight to that conclusion. Like they are guiding themselves to that conclusion. I'm sure you thought about that. So I'm curious, like, what your thoughts were on that, about like letting somebody guide themselves to a conclusion or to a discovery versus just like putting it in front of them, and how you thought about doing that.
Yeah, when someone is in that phase of the traditional marketing funnel, I like to just talk about it as like, hey, a potential customer of yours is sleuthing around and trying to figure out if this is the right thing for them. When someone's in that mindset, they almost want to discover the information versus being spoon-fed the information. Because, if your website is, I have written a lot of website copy as a marketing consultant, so that's like a soapbox I'm trying to not get on. But like, if your website is doing what your website's supposed to do, your website is spoon feeding people information, right? Because there's important things that someone needs to know about. What do you do? How do you solve their problem? How much does it cost, right? Like that kind of stuff. But the folks who are going to go on this journey of like clicking through things and actually reading stuff and doing things like taking your quiz, they want to put in a little bit of effort, because they are judging whether or not you actually understand them as a person, whether or not you actually understand the problem that they're having in a way that's not just like something is stressful and overwhelming, because everybody says that someone's problem is stressful and overwhelming and we can solve that. So in my mind, that particular person in that particular moment is absolutely willing to put in some effort. And so there is something really, I used this word already, but like really validating for that particular persona when they get to experience just like uncovering and discovering information in that way. So because Enji's website does spoon feed people stuff, right? We have pages for our solutions. We have pages for all of our features. We have everything up the yin yang. If you wanted to just go straight to the horse's mouth, you can find that. But the psychology behind who's going to do that and who's going to do this is very different.
I'm fascinated by this concept. So do you think, or maybe you have numbers, like, is it just a different group of people? Like there's a group of people that's just like, give me the simple thing, sign up, good. And then there's another group of people that's like, they don't, like they almost want it to be effortful versus being effortless. Are those distinct personas?
Yeah. There are lots of books around different types of people. And the one that's coming to mind, it's not exactly what we're talking about, but it's similar enough. There's a book called Surrounded by Idiots, and it talks about these 4 core types of human personalities. And some people just want to be told what to do, right? Like they're great, like B team players, right? Like meaning they're not the person making the decisions, but if you tell them this is what I need implemented, they're going to run with it and they're going to do it really well. And so they just want to be spoon fed, hey, this is the task at hand. But there's another type of person who is very analytical, kind of cynical in some ways, and is going to research stuff to the nth degree, right? And those are the types of people who need to discover stuff. They need to keep digging versus just taking information that is put in front of them for face value, right? They're going to use that, like they'll put that in their little, evidence bucket, but they want more evidence. So they're going to keep digging around. And so it's important to basically say the same thing to people, but give it to them in different ways so that you're satisfying these different types of personalities and how they like to operate within the world.
That's really cool. I haven't heard of that book. I gotta go read it now.
Yeah.
I feel like I've read every book on personalities being in this business. So that's a new one. Thank you for that. But yeah, you're like addressing each of those different types with different stuff. And like the main standard SaaS landing page of hero big button is for the just tell me what to do and how to do it. And then the quiz in your case on the site is for that other persona that's like, I want to discover it myself. And I like that you said that you end up in the same place, because I think that's a really common misconception that people have with quizzes is like, oh, this needs to be some other content that doesn't exist anywhere in my existing world. And it's like, no, it's the same content. It's just you're letting somebody discover it for themselves and experience it for themselves versus just like showing it to them. This is such an interesting
if you're
concept.
like going on a road trip and you're trying to get to LA, there are like 100 billion ways you can get to LA, but you're still going to end up in LA, right? So your marketing is the same, like whatever your product is, whether it's software or, like an actual service or whatever it is, like your product is your product. The thing you're selling is the thing that you're selling. You're trying to get everyone to that point. But there are all these different pathways that someone can choose in order to get to the point where they're going to make a decision on whether or not they're going to give you money and purchase or not.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in sales, especially like SaaS sales, everybody talks about like, oh, you got to highlight this feature for this person because that's what they care about. They don't care about all the features. But this way of thinking about it, where it's like based on the personality of the person, like how are they wired as a person versus like what part of your product do they want, which I guess in your case, it does kind of map back a little bit to like which part of the product is going to most appeal to them to start off. Was that a conscious choice of like this
Yeah.
personality goes to this part of the product?
Yeah, because for a really good example is Enji has this feature that's all about tracking results or marketing metrics, and for those people who aren't afraid of a little bit of jargon, KPIs, because a lot of people are like, "What is a KPI? I don't know." And so for those folks, for people who like numbers, right? They have a very different, their brains work differently than someone who's on the other end of the spectrum and would tell me, Taylor, just tell me what to do, right? Like those people are like living in the grayest of worlds and they're just like, I don't know what to do. And then on the opposite end, you have the numbers folks and like, no, I know where I would potentially want to end up. And so we do try to funnel people based on a couple things to the feature that's going to click the fastest for them. And this is one of the things that makes marketing not straightforward, right? Is that there are so many layers to how you can approach saying the things that you need to say at the quote unquote right time for someone, that you're like, okay, well, I need to know what their problem is and I need to know what their personality is. And then I need to know like da 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 da. And like, how does that all come together? And, so we've picked two pretty straightforward things. It's like, how do we guide you? How do we show you that we understand your problem and guide you toward it that way? Or how do we just like give you this page of the website? Right? Hey, like click this button to go find it. So you can absolutely make a decision to not try to, do it from 7 different angles, but it is important that you do it from more than one. And, this is why marketers talk so much about really getting to know who your customers are as people, way beyond demographics, because what marketing and sales and your product, right? If we're talking about like the whole package of what software is trying to achieve, we are trying to motivate, and not even motivate, we're trying to like make someone behave a certain way. Right? We're trying to get people to subscribe to our product. We're trying to get people to do a free trial. We are trying to make them behave in a certain way. And that is rooted in psychology. And so getting to understand who your people are and in a very simple way, what they're thinking, doing, and feeling before they've decided to smash that subscribe button, so to speak, is really important. And that's where a quiz really is super uniquely positioned to help you do that. And, one of the things that we're doing, well, it's on the pretty near the top of my honey-do list, is developing a quiz that helps people become problem aware for Enji, because one of the things that we've really learned because of all of the customer interviews that we've done this year is that people are not problem aware in the traditional sense, because Enji has 9 different features that solve 9 different problems. And then each of those main features has like all these little, bells and whistles, right? Like there's a lot that you can do. And because we're trying to solve like the big marketing problem for people who have to do their own marketing, like they don't even know that they're in this messy soup. I mean, like they feel like they're in a messy soup. And so that's why you always hear people complaining about having to do their own marketing, but they don't know how to actually verbalize that and even how to go about looking for a solution to that problem. So the quiz that I want to create next is going to be all about getting someone to become problem aware. And it's going to be great when I get it done. It's going to take a lot of staring at the blank wall to come up with the right series of questions. But that's going to be incredibly helpful, again, in like funneling people to where they should go and helping them experience a quick win before they've had to like do much of anything else.
I think a lot of people are interested in that concept because, the quiz on the website, like you have set up and you cracked that code, it's working well. That's like phase one. And I think the natural curiosity once phase one is conquered is like, what's phase two? Can I use this to go out and acquire people that aren't aware of our brand, aren't even necessarily aware of the problem? How are you, like, what's your thinking framework for how to think about like what would appeal to somebody that's in that scenario where like they have this problem but they're not aware of it? Like, how are you thinking through it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that quiz is going to have to do is speak in very human terms, like no jargon. It's going to be based on what is their reality really like in very specific terms. And because, like I said earlier, we could talk about, oh, are you overwhelmed and stressed out by your marketing? Like that's not the lead that we're trying to go for. We're going to need to get into, and I've got this whole spreadsheet. I'm like, my not photographic memory is trying to like picture it in my brain to give you specific examples. But like we have this whole matrix now of what people are thinking, doing, and feeling at certain points in their, like in the buyer journey. And so I'm going to be staring at that and thinking, okay, well, if, here's one that's coming to mind. Like if I'm seeing my non-photographic, but photographic memory, it's like people can actually be juggling a lot of tools is one of the things that our customers that we interviewed called out, and it was a common thread. So I'm going to need to have questions that center around like, having too many tabs or subscribing to software that you get excited about, but then end up not using, or, like that kind of stuff where it's not just, oh, are you juggling too many tools? I'm going to have to pick something really specific that's like, no, that's me. Like I am notorious for buying software and not using it, right? Which as software founders is, that's a very real thing that we know people do. So it is about speaking truth to their reality, which if you're not a marketer and you're like a technical founder who now is like, oh, I have to do this thing. I have to do this thing. And it's not just zeros and ones. It's going to feel like a big stretch for you. But I would, whether you're the right person to do customer interviews or you need to hire someone to do them for you, like that is money that I don't think you'll regret spending, especially if it's not in your personal skill set. Because that's what the quiz, that's what a really powerful quiz is going to do. It's going to make someone, as they're answering questions, go, oh, they know me. And that reaction to any part of your marketing is one of the most powerful ones that you can make someone feel.
I agree with that 100%. I think an excellent quiz, it's like, I use this analogy where it's like, if you really know somebody, then like where they hide the keys in their house. Well, it's like, oh, it's underneath the pot, behind the garage, underneath whatever, right? And it's kind of like that, but in reverse, where it's like you wouldn't even know to ask this question unless you understood the reality of your audience, and that that to me feels like a instant path to trust that
Yes,
is just cuts through all the noise.
it does. And it is so much more important in a market like what the messy soup that is 2025, which is the year that we are recording this. Like, people are skeptical these days because we've been bombarded by marketing in the past that has promised us the world, right? And then we buy into the thing and we're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, this thing is going to change my life. And then you buy it and then you're like, womp womp. It didn't. And so humans are becoming more and more skeptical. And that's why you see marketing taking longer to convert and more touch points, right? Like 7 touch. What I wouldn't give for the 7 touch point rule to be true again. I would give so much for that, because it's like 3 or 4 times that at this point. But it's all because it's harder to earn people's trust. And so whatever you can do to make that trust like be had faster is really, really smart. And I know I've kind of been a little bit of a broken record during this conversation, but there's this human side to everything that we do on when it comes to marketing that kind of gets forgotten by a lot of people. And I think it's because we're, as an industry, the proverbial we're trying to find some sort of equation, some sort of formula with our marketing. It's like, if I do X, I will get Y. But that's way too transactional. Because there are all of these, I mean, before we hit record, Josh, we were talking about how like there are all these things happening outside of us that we have no control over that impact how something is going to work. And like, you can take this marketing thing that, worked in 2022 and then it didn't work in 2023 or 2024, but now it's working in 2025, right? There are just like all these things happening that are variables in that equation, but a lot of marketing doesn't take into account. And I feel pretty confident in saying it's like the psychology pieces of that equation that people don't take into account. They just think of the mechanics of, I need to send 4 email newsletters this week. Check. I need to do, 3 Instagram reels this week. Check, right? Like, it's so much more than that. And that's why I love how simple it's been to like quickly earn someone's trust and have them end up on my email list, where I can then continue to say the things to prove to them that I do understand who they are as people. I do understand the problem that they're experiencing. And then that I have a solution for that problem. But that only happens after all of this trust building has taken place.
Yeah. As you're talking, I think, see if you agree with this, but I think perhaps the equation that does exist now. So the previous equation was like numbers. It was like, oh, do this amount of volume of things, put out this many pieces of content, this many Instagram posts, whatever. And then you'll see dollars come in, right? That's the equation. Boom, boom. Now, in my view, at least, there's still an equation, but the equation is the number of real quality conversations you have with your ideal customers who are happy using your product. And if you do that on a consistent basis, it's still going to be like dollars that come in. But I think what people really dislike is that you can't track it anymore. Like,
nope,
there's no tracking.
Womp womp.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really bothering business owners, especially folks that are like in the analytical headspace. It's like, well, I can't see the numbers. And it's like, you kind of can. It's just like, it's not direct. And I think the thing that's happening there is the psychological piece, because if you're talking to those people, naturally the way that they speak to you is going to show up in your marketing, it's going to show up in your product. They're going to tell you what they don't like, you're going to fix that. And so then you kind of see the ball start to roll, but you're not going to be able to point to any one specific thing and be like, on June 22nd, I started posting 6 times a week and now I have more sales. It's like, no, like, but I guess you could look back and be like, this is when I started really investing in quality conversations, customer conversations, like you're talking about, and then be able to see over time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's as a marketer.
Yeah.
I personally I'm not a performance marketer, like ads and like lead gen, things I have to do, but it's not where I really am great. Like I'm a great brand and content marketer. And so that's the things that we can't actually track. That is my world. And that's where, one of my co-founders is my spouse, and he'll be like, so like why, fill in the blank of whatever question you could imagine asking. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like it worked. Sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I'm being a little bit jokey with that, but there is a lot of that where like you just won't know, because word of mouth marketing and brand marketing are intrinsically like intangible things. And it's hard for you to know that, hey, this one customer, like even if I know that a customer found us on, like I can see on Instagram, oh, this person followed us from an ad, right? On Instagram. Then I see that like every once in a while they engage with us. Maybe I see that they're at least seeing our stories, but they're not like clicking all the time. And then maybe I see that they get on they take the quiz and they get on the email list. But what I can't see is, are they going out and asking their friends, hey, have you heard about this thing? What do you think about this thing? Right? Like all of that sleuthing that happens offline that is going to impact the numbers that I can track. So there are some things that you're just going to have to like have a weird sense of blind faith over and use your gut to know whether or not you're on the right track or not. But tracking numbers, I mean, that's the thing that like basically no one is doing unless you are a marketer, that I would implore you to do. Start tracking your results. And if you are setting up a quiz, or when you set up your quiz, the other thing that I think goes hand in hand with this is making sure that you've got UTMs set up and that you're using them in your email newsletters so that you can then track some sort of like more linear customer journey to know that, hey, my email newsletters are converting, or, whatever place you're sharing a link, you can have more tangible metrics around those things. But yeah, like you are just in some ways going to have faith about it. But that's why talking to your customers, having real conversations like with people, like trying to get them to reply to your email newsletters, having DM conversations with them even before they have given you a single cent is super, super important. And you can't, like, you will get feedback in those spaces about whether or not parts of your marketing is working. And like, that's how you can start to actually get some like, well, okay, well, whoever's in charge of marketing asked me about this, or the CEO asked me about this. And okay, well, yeah, I do have some like actual data points to talk to, rather than just like, maybe it's working. So
yeah, it's a combination of the head, the numbers, and then like the heart, which is like, do these conversations feel genuinely mutual, where like I'm talking to somebody about my product and they're telling me that's helpful to them, and it actually seems like that's correct. Like they're not just being nice or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
And you can kind of
Totally.
combine those two things to give yourself, the numbers, and also just like the gut check, like, is this the right thing to be doing? I like that. I think that's a good place to wrap and leave people to chew on that. Where can people go to see your quiz and like experience that? And then also just check out Enji if they're interested.
Yeah, so our website, which is enji.co, that's where our quiz should pop up on the homepage. That's like I said, it's been something that's been super, super effective. I get, for not putting any money behind it, I get like 100 people a month who sign up for our email list just from that quiz alone, which is fantastic. So like, if you're a software company and you're not doing something like this and someone is putting pressure on you to generate leads, hi, this is the way that you're going to do it, and you're going to do it in the quickest way humanly possible. So yeah, that's where you can learn more about Enji. And if you kind of like my version of weird, then Instagram has all of my versions of weird, and we're Enji_CO over there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all this wisdom with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.